I have it. So good evening, everybody, and I'm delighted to be part of this presentation also. I'm Deirdre Loingsigh, and I'm the director of Éinead na Gaeilge, which is the Irish Language Centre at the University of Limerick. And I suppose in my role as director of centre, I'm involved in a whole series of teaching and learning and language support initiatives, all of them promoting bilingualism both on campus and in the city and the region beyond. So much of my work and my research relates to advising for language learning and support for new speakers of Irish in particular. And a key target group in recent years have been parents, because as you know, by having parents on board, we can ensure language transmission to the next generation and essentially positive attitudes to language also. So the parents involved in my project are parents from a very deprived area in the city. It's a regeneration community, and here many of the projects target socially deprived neighbourhoods and estates, and efforts are often made to raise the standards of living. So I'm presenting my project this evening in that context. And similar to the projects that are referred to by Hampton in the article that is bringing us all together in this symposium, what I'm going to discuss is a story about language learning and its links with the lived experience of being part of an area which suffers from socio-economic deprivation. So therefore, my focus, rather than just being on language support and on language revitalization, will also deal with issues around empowerment, confidence building, and social mobility. So I'm splitting my presentation into 4 parts. I'm going to start giving you an overview of the UNESCO Knowledge for Change model of community-based participatory research. I'm not sure if some of you might be familiar with that. And I'll make some parallels with linguistic citizenship. I'll briefly describe then a project that we call Bláthú. Bláthú is the Irish word for flourishing. So you'll see lots of flowers on my slides this evening. And then I'm going to talk about well-being and how we have used a well-being framework in our analysis of some of the themes that have come up in our data, and then some brief points around impact, knowledge mobilization, and the role of universities in this area. Starting with community-based participatory research, it's considered a collaborative enterprise. It seeks to democratize knowledge creation by validating multiple sources of knowledge and promoting the use of multiple methods of discovery and dissemination. And the goal is typically social action for the purpose of achieving social change and social justice. So you'll see the logo of the Knowledge for Change initiative at the bottom of the screen. We have recently established a hub at Limerick. It's a UNESCO initiative, and it is essentially looking at training the next generation of community-based participatory researchers, both in academia and in the community. So I've been very privileged to have been trained and have been involved in the initiative for the last 2 years or so. Some of the themes that come up in good principles of community-based participatory research, and indeed in adult education, which is a field that I work in, relate very well to those of linguistic citizenship. I'm not going to go through these in detail now, but I suppose I'd like to mention 3 points in particular. There is an emphasis on putting democratic participation first, emphasizing cultural and political voice and agency rather than just language on its own. All sorts of linguistic practices are valued, and the importance of grassroots activity on the ground is very central. Linguistic citizenship also puts the spotlight on the role of universities to sustain research partnerships and linguistic citizenship. And I might have a chance to talk a little bit more about that towards the end of my presentation. And also it encourages us to start looking at ways of sharing innovations around participatory approaches and pedagogy. You will see in some of my slides that I am looking particularly at using arts-based methods. I won't have a chance to go into the detail of those this evening, but that is what's referred to when we talk about multiple ways of gathering the stories of project participants. The participants in the Bláthú project were a group of parents and grandparents and their children who were all attending junior classes in an immersion school in one of the Regeneration areas. Also involved in the project was the homeschool community liaison coordinator, an Irish language tutor from the Education and Training Board who were involved in many initiatives around adult education in the city, support staff, and myself, a Knowledge for Change trainee mentor at the time from the Irish Language Centre at the university. DEIS is the Irish word for opportunity, and it stands here for the designation of schools that are looking at being involved in one of the government initiatives looking to address issues of educational inclusion in areas at risk of disadvantage. So it stands for delivering equality of opportunity in schools, and typically these schools are in employment black spot areas. Many of the families are living in very chaotic environments and literacy levels are poor. This school and this group of participants, you will be interested maybe to know that English was the language of the home. Literacy levels in English were very low, and competence in Irish language was very low also. Our research intention sought to look at ways of empowering this group of parents and encourage them to get engaged in initiatives with the school. And we were very interested in looking at how well-being is linked to determinants of life satisfaction in general. So essentially we looked at building their confidence in Irish using rhymes in particular, but we were very open to see how the project might emerge as the weeks progressed. So it was a short 6-week project. The participants themselves called it Up le Gaeilge, Undercover Parents with Irish. They came up with the name themselves, and at the initial session we decided that the format would be that we would have 45 minutes of the parents on their own, and then that the children would come down and they would have an opportunity to surprise them with all of the formulaic new expressions that they had. So we had a very activity-based agenda and very much led by the parents. So over the 6 weeks, the parents were involved in activities, and they had a breakfast gathering, they gardened, they walked to a local cafe, they came on a visit to our campus where they had never visited before. And we used in our reflective and data gathering what we called a gallery walk, where they observed and discussed some of the images that were taken along the way over the 6-week program. As I said, I won't go into the data collection now, but if any of you have any questions about that, I'll look at that in the question and answer session. I suppose one point that is important to make is that typically arts-based methods are very effective ways of developing trust and relationship and establishing camaraderie with a group of research participants. The black frame that you see was used originally and intended originally just as an icebreaker, but we ended up using it very much throughout the whole 6-week program. So we used the 5 ways of well-being, or 5 ways to well-being, as one of our frameworks in analysing the data. And I was delighted to find in my preparation for the symposium that it's also used in Canada, and these images on the screen are taken from that particular web link. So I'm going to very quickly run through some excerpts from the data now and show you how we have interpreted this according to these 5 ways to well-being. So the first one is connect, and looking for a moment at the building of relationships. This was seen as very integral from the outset, and really all of us contemplated on the ways we were managing to build a group dynamic and our own identity as part of the research team from the outset. At the beginning and in the reflective gallery walk, one of the parents said that in the very beginning they were all sitting there looking at each other. But along the way, they began to start telling stories about themselves and to divulge personal information, personal habits. They talked about having bought a twin tub washing machine for their mobile home, or loving the quiet time at night when the children went to bed, or finding cooking soothing, and such issues like that. One of the activities that we asked them to do was to write their vision for the project on these little plant cutouts that you see on the screen. And they wrote statements like, I want to be more confident in Irish. I want to be more patient. I want to start a revolution. I want to get exercise. I want to awaken pride. So they give us a good sense early on of the energy of the group and some of their personal perspectives. In relation to the theme connect, connections and a sense of belonging to the local area were very palpable throughout. And one of the activities and one of the data collection instruments we used was walking, and the children were asked to take photographs of everywhere they saw Irish along the way. And it allowed us in lots of ways do what is called in community-based participatory research, a facilitated community literature review, and it allowed us to gather stories. And this particular sign, which says fáilte, which is the Irish word for welcome, is a very lively mural on one of the walls in a very bleak part of the neighbourhood. And it allowed me to ask stories about how that Irish word had come to be written on the wall. And it led to them telling lots of stories about the interest in Irish in the area. And I learned about the political context of the establishment of the Irish Medium School in the 80s, when left-wing Republican politics was really very strong in the locality. I'm not going to have time to go through all of the various themes. I might move on to this one, which is taking notice. And Mental Health Ireland promotes this as taking the opportunity to savour the moment and of being aware of what's going on around us and our feelings in particular. And I think some of the really joyous moments in the data gathering related to what the children noticed. And this data are really relished in the production of knowledge. One parent talked about the beautiful mural on the wall in the Irish World Academy, and the child had spent the night talking about the white horse on her return from campus. And one of the very special encounters that another parent mentioned was this encounter on the Living Bridge with a guide dog, which was unanticipated, but caused great glee. And the little guy in the bottom of the photograph, his grandmother told the story about him when he was asked, how did you get on at the university, saying, I won an umbrella. And he won a University of Limerick umbrella, which we thought would be very effective as a way of linking the university to his own community. To wrap up, I think I'd like to promote this notion of using frameworks and being certain about our impact frameworks from the very early design stage in our projects. And by using Wellbeing, we used a framework that was readily understandable, I think, to the university, to all of the participants. And we looked at ways of mobilizing knowledge and communicating knowledge in a way that they would actually be able to use. So the project is part now of the Knowledge for Change portfolio of projects that fall under languages and culture at the university, and we are working very hard at organising and formalising structures so that future projects using similar methodologies and with a similar vision might lead to more sustainable approaches because of those structures being established both within the community and the university itself. So I'd like to leave you maybe with a little bunch of Mayflowers, because it's May Eve, and in Ireland on this evening we scatter flowers on the doorstep to welcome the summer and to ward off all evil. So I suppose I'm thanking you for your participation and wish you a lovely summer.